Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. My name is Staff Sergeant Samuel Kroll at the North Dakota National Guard's Public Affairs Office. Today I have a very special guest, Technical Sergeant Bradley Berthold. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Could be warmer, though.
Yeah, it could be. It's negative, what, like 30 out right now?
Yeah.
With wind chill? It's stupid.
Yeah. Craziness.
So-
Why we live in North Dakota, right?
Yeah. I was just about to say, like, if I would be in Arizona or anywhere else right now, I would love it. But, hey, we got a day of at least 20 degrees more tomorrow, and then we got a 40 degree plus heat wave coming. So.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So you are with the Air National Guard's recruiting office. Can you talk a little bit about, first off, where you're from, et cetera, and then we'll get into about what you do for the Air National Guard.
Yeah. So I grew up in Larimore, North Dakota, small town farm. Like, growing up, it was weird. It was just never thought of the military as a real thing. Grew up next to Grand Forks Air Force Base, and every 4 years I got to see my friends leave, and I didn't really want that, right? So when I grew up there, joined the Air National Guard because family farm was going under, and there was just certain life issues that were happening. Got that done. Went into the Guard. Went to Wahpeton for a year and a half. Got my HVAC degree, so heating, cooling, ventilation. Kind of didn't like being on call. Went to NDSU, got my bachelor's of science in animal and range management. Wanted to move out west. So here we are as a senior recruiter out west. But I kind of job hopped a little bit. Always stayed with the Air National Guard. Was a jet engine mechanic. Went to a crew chief. Went to vehicle maintenance. And then eventually recruiting. So it was a PCS move out here, which was really nice. The hard part was it was COVID, low interest rates, and the western side of the state had like a zero housing market. So trying to find a house during that move, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But after finding recruiting now, I absolutely love it.
Well, good. So you're from Larimore and you had a farm. Was that mainly, like, you didn't do any ranching, or was it kind of a mix of both?
We did. It was a mix of both. So we were a small farm, less than 500 acres, and then we had over 200 cows.
Nice.
So, and on the eastern side of the state, I can say that if you have a herd that's more than 200 cows, that's a lot of cows.
You do pretty well off.
Yeah. So it's not like the western side of the state where it's mostly or primarily grassland.
Yeah.
And then, or rangeland, right? And then you have a couple hundred head of cows, and you're like, I'm a small rancher.
Small.
Yeah.
So you said Minot Air Force Base, right? Or was it Grand Forks?
Grand Forks Air Force Base was 15 miles away.
Wow. So did a lot of your friends join the active component and go to Grand Forks? Or excuse me, Grand Forks is air, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Air Force. Yep.
So and I'm an Army cat, right?
Yep.
So I'm always getting mixed up of like how the Army or how the Air Force bases work, and like I know of a couple in town. So there's the active duty in Minot.
Yep.
And there's Grand Forks.
Yep.
What does the Air National Guard in North Dakota look like? Jobs and also just places where you drill out of.
Yeah. So active duty wise, we're very similar. We go to the same basic training. We go to the same tech school, right? We do everything that the active duty does, but on a weekend status. Mm-hmm. So when you hit your guard drill weekend, you go in to be trained as a war fighter, right? Mm-hmm. So we're trained to be prepared to go overseas to do the job that you are trained to do. So whether that's vehicle maintenance like myself, or not recruiting anymore now, but vehicle maintenance, aircraft maintenance, we were trained to be ready to go and at least be proficient when we got overseas, right? Mm-hmm. It would take a little bit of a learning curve to get to 100%, but you kind of know that going in. Mm-hmm. So facilities are, I would say the Air National Guard base probably has better facilities than most of the active duty bases around here.
We sleep in tents a lot of times.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like Camp Grafton, not too shabby. I love that place.
Yeah, you guys love that place, and like the Air Guard's like, oh, we got to go to Camp Grafton. Oh God.
I get it.
like there are some differences between the branches for sure. So
In regards to jobs, so we know that we have a couple of different installations in North Dakota, and a couple of different units that the Air Guard specifically have, the 119th, as well as, the Happy Hooligans. Can you kind of talk a little, the 219th, yeah. So can you talk a little bit about those units and the jobs that they have?
yeah, so I'll start with the 219th. It's our security forces detachment out of Minot. And basically what they do is nuclear security. So on the weekend status, you're being trained to be prepped and ready to go out to the field on the situation that Minot Security Forces nuclear side leaves, and we have to backfill for them. So what that looks like might be one weekend is you're getting your 9mm qualification, you're getting your M4 qualification, you're doing stun grenades or taser training, all those different trainings that are required for that job. You're never sitting around doing nothing. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of you're training, you're getting prepped, you have flight time. There's always something going on, which is really awesome to me because when we go up there as recruiters and we see that everybody's busy and you're not bored and people are joking around and having fun, but still you're not just sitting on your phone waiting, killing 3 hours at the end of the day,
Lot to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and to keep your qualifications up there, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of, they just implemented the pepper ball. So it's the CO2 powered pepper ball, like basically a paintball gun, but it's pepper balls, and it's way worse than just like the OC spray. Ugh. So yeah, because you like aim for center mass and then it like poofs up in your face. Oh yeah, it's.
Oh. I think I'd take OC spray.
Yeah, I don't know.
At least with that, it's just a burn, not an impact and then burn.
Right, and then you breathe it all in. And, sounds terrible. So, yeah, so that's our security forces detachment up in Minot. So,
cool.
Yeah, very hands-on. So it's really interesting on that aspect of it, right? Because you're always learning something new. They've got like a counter sniper program now. So they've got all these different things that are always going on. They have lots of really cool TDYs that you can go on. So your temporary duties, right? So you can volunteer to do these trainings and like volunteer to go do like the nuclear protection training, all these different ones. So it's like you got to push a Humvee and you got to use all these different weapon systems and it's all timed and
wow.
Yeah. So, but it's all voluntary, right? So, and being a voluntary force, it's kind of cool to be able to have those exciting things where people aren't just telling you, hey, please go over here and do this.
If there's one thing in the Guard that, and I don't know what your purview on it, but, we're 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year. A lot of people say the weekend warrior or, the weekend force, those are the constant things that a lot of people look at. But then you have like this 219th group out of Minot that has all the additional stuff. And the Army has similar one occasional tour things where you can work with a specific unit, etc. But to be able to be that hands-on all the time and then also have the opportunities to do those at a moment's notice, a lot of people don't realize that that's a big thing for a lot of people. You can do as much active duty stuff as you want to while you're still being in the Guard.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the coolest things that they have up there is they have a shoot house.
Oh.
So they have simunitions, paint rounds that shoot out of their M9s and M4s.
Nice.
So
Change
they
out
do.
The bolt carrier.
Yeah. So they do shoot, move, and communicate, and they do a lot of that hands-on training that. I'm sorry, our boys in Fargo doing security forces, or boys and girls, right? They just don't get that.
Yeah.
They don't get that experience on the weekends. They might be able to do a little bit of it, but they don't get that full-on looking at a target and moving through a building or a structure or...
Yeah, the assets aren't necessarily right there.
Right.
So then on the Fargo, what are some of the things out in Fargo with the 119th?
Oh, man. That's where we always like to say we got our 70-plus jobs, right? Mm-hmm. They're not always available. We might have, currently we have 10 jobs available.
Wow.
So
that's not a lot.
No.
That's crazy, actually.
So, but we've got our intel, we've got our basic, like our basic jobs, base comm, we've got vehicle maintenance, we've got our civil engineering squadron, and then we have our operations group. So I would say our main employer, right, is our operations group and our intel group.
Okay.
And then the rest of it is pretty much like base support, right? You got your services, you've got your logistics, you've got all of those other ones to support, medical. So, yeah, so our operations group, right? We fly MQ-9 Reapers all around the world. Mm-hmm. So
those are so cool, man.
Yeah. They're a lot bigger than you actually think when you see them.
As a photographer, I've seen like the scale of the wingspan to a person, standing guiding it on the flight line, yep. And you're like, what the heck? It's almost, I don't have the calculations, but would it equate to roughly around the wingspan, say like the Black Hawk's propellers sticking out from the sides of it?
Oh man,
I don't even want to know.
I don't even know.
It's probably crazy, but they're unmanned, correct?
Yes, they are unmanned. So we fly them right from base. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of our launch and recovery it's not even so much our pilots that are flying. Mm-hmm. It's we launch an airplane and, maybe California picks it up. Mm-hmm. And then they do a run around Devil's Lake, or they grab it and then they do like a simunitions run out to Wisconsin.
Wow.
So they got like the test site out there.
Yeah.
So we'll put dummy bombs on, we'll launch, and then somebody else will grab it because they need flying time.
That's cool. So do you know like a rough estimate of what, well, that might be a little too much info, but that's crazy to think that, for a majority of the aircraft that we have on the Guard side, Army side, mm-hmm. right? You got a Black Hawks, we've got some fixed wing stuff, but very, very minuscule, and it's all manned. But
right.
To have an unmanned drone and to hear you say like, oh yeah, we can send it off, and then some pilot from somewhere else can just hook up and that's crazy. That's logistically insane. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's what we do. That's how we do our mission. That's how we support our federal government, right? Mm-hmm. So when our pilots step in for the day or our sensor operators step in for the day, they step in and they are going to war.
Right.
So they're stepping in and they're flying that airplane, insert country, right?
Sure.
So wherever we're at that day, that's what they're doing. So that's the cool side with that. And then our intel, right? They're looking at top secret information.
Right.
And doing, anywheres from how can we get into this XYZ location, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. all the way to can we cyber? Mm. So we're cyber and intelligence, right? So we might be looking at how does this adversary work, right? How can we track them through using our telecommunications or something like that? Or can we help, or can we get information from just watching them?
Right.
So, yeah, I can't say too much with a lot of that because some of it is pretty generalized information, right. But their activations are pretty cool when they get activated. They get activated to our base. So if you're a weekender mm-hmm. on that side, they get activated to our base, and then they're planning mission sets.
Yeah. Well, and that's just super cool, though. Like, to think that, I'll be the first one to admit, I'm an Army guy. When I see the Air Guard do stuff, I'm like, it's just a bunch of Air Force guys, right? But you guys do some seriously cool stuff, mm-hmm. and I've had to reach out a couple of times to our PAO contact in Fargo, and the stuff he sends me, and the footage of them doing, like you said, TDYs over stuff or overseas, including our partnership program with like Ghana and
yep.
a bunch of other different things, right? You guys do quite a bit. You have a medical group, you've got the security forces squadron, like you said. There are firefighters, of course. You don't think about it, right? But, well, if something starts on fire, especially an aircraft, you need that. And then also the heritage behind the Air Guard in North Dakota is pretty, because we used to have a fighter program out in, where was that, Minot, or was that Fargo?
Fargo. Yeah, we had F-16s, F-4s. I mean, we've had a whole laundry list of aircraft fighters.
Yeah. So that kind of lineage is super cool. So we talked about some of the jobs, right? What are some of the things that you see in today's age that get people to want to join? It could just be the Air Guard, but also just in general. Maybe it's a family member. What are some of the trends that you see of young or old people wanting to join the Air Guard or military right now?
Yeah, kind of two different standards, right? The older individuals that I've worked lately, they've got their career, their family is established. Kids are 17, 15, or they're getting ready to graduate, and they're 35, 40, and they want to get in. They want to serve their country. They couldn't do it before because they had kids or something was always like in that way. But now they want to serve their country, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want to lose their job, so they don't want a full-time job. But, if cyber is available, we'll just say a cyber job is available at the Air National Guard base. They want to do that because their career field is cyber already. Mm-hmm. So why not take the best of both worlds, right? So go to basic training, go to tech school, come back, have a weekend cyber job that pays pretty well, and, serve your country that way. So, and then like our younger kids, I see there was a big push for like, I feel like the free college.
Sure.
So there was a big push, and I think that really stuck with a lot of those juniors and seniors that I felt like they thought that they were going to get the free. Mm-hmm. It was going to be free. It's going to be free for me. I'm not going to do anything to better myself.
Sure.
And that's the way I look at it, right?
Sure.
But I think that's gone away now. Mm-hmm. And I think this next group of kids has realized, like, ooh, I better figure it out.
Right.
Or I need to put in for more scholarships or something like that to get that push. Family members are really important. Mm-hmm. So having a family member that's in the Army National Guard, in the Air National Guard, was active duty, was whatever, right? Those individuals, that support system for like, hey, you're doing a good job. This is going to be very important for you. Maybe not 6 years down the road, but 20 years down the road when you retire, right? Mm-hmm. Have some health insurance, have some type of 401k for retirement. These things are going to benefit you long term. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of that is beneficial, having a family member there to support you. Because if you're coming in, for example, to my office and it's just you, there's a lot of miscommunication, right?
Yeah, brand new person.
Yeah, you hear...
What's he going to try to sell me now?
Right, right. Yeah, you hear a lot of different... You'll hear what you want to hear, right? Mm-hmm. So when I talk to you about, maybe we have some bonuses or maybe we have these school benefits, it's completely different than, he's just selling me on school. Mm-hmm. And I always tell everybody when I first meet them, I'm like, school is very important to me. Growing up on a farm that was failing, all of these different things, like this drove me to get my college paid for. So when I talk to you about these things, these are very important to me. Might not be important for you, just let me know, right? Because if it's not important to you and you're just looking for a part-time job, I don't want to bother you with school stuff that, maybe 6 years down the road, you're like, yeah, maybe I'll go to college now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, no, we talk about it a lot, like, and I'm very blunt and up front, right? So I'm just like, hey, tell me what you want to know. Yeah. So I always love asking questions. Like, if you got more questions for me, I'm like, yeah, let's go. More questions. Because the more information you know,
right,
the less like hesitancy, the less, you're not second guessing all the time. Well, God, am I going to get this job? Is it right for me? No, let's ask that question, right?
Yep.
Because if you have that time or you have that like, and it just eats at you, more than likely it's going to eat at you until you don't join.
Right. And I'm sure I mean, I was that kid. I went in and I was like, I'm going to do this. And I didn't even think about the health care or the 401k option. That's all. I mean, an 18-year-old for the majority of the time. And if for myself, that wasn't the case. It was like, I want to be in uniform. I want to carry my family heritage. What are some of the cool jobs I can do?
Right. What about a VA home loan?
Yeah, and it's all very subjective. I mean, you could have 20 people come to your office and say, I want to do this. And each one of them are going to have a catered answer specifically to what they're wanting out of either joining the service, any service for that matter, or just in general information.
Yeah. Yeah. And being knowledgeable about it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I can't relate to every job, but I can highlight some things that they do. And then I can find somebody that knows way more about it. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that I really enjoy is, being able to, call back to the unit and be like, hey, I got a person that's interested. Mm-hmm. You got 5 minutes or 10 minutes to, give them a rundown of what your job looks like.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's huge just being able to see the base.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about it this way. And I don't know what your take is on it, right? Let's say we're both out of uniform. Mm-hmm. And the CEO of the biggest tech company in the world says, hey, I want you to meet my buddy. And he owns the stepping stone after you graduate from college to get involved into this tech company world, right? That's exactly what you're doing as a recruiter with these jobs. It's like, you want it? I got the person for you. Yeah. Let's talk to him. And then he's going to be like, this is exactly what you want. This is the coolest thing. And then you just create that. I mean, and that's the one thing all, I think, branches have in common, right? Is whether you're Army, Air, right? The job you do together, I mean, or just in general, if they're similar, you make those connections, and it's like you got a call in 10 seconds. You know who to talk to.
Yep. Yeah, and then also, like, okay, so you go to MEPS. So for the western side of the state, right? So you go to MEPS, and I try to schedule you with a base tour that same day. So when you're done with your MEPS processing, you go up to the base and you do your tour. So you take your top 3 jobs and say there's fire hall security forces, and I'm just randomly, let's do a cyber and intel job. So you get to meet the boss, meet the chief or the head of the section, and then you get to meet with one of the coworkers that's there. That's probably going to be there where the other 2 might not be there by the time you get back from basic training and tech school. So
that guy you were talking to is probably the next chief.
Right. So when you get there, right, you get to know exactly what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You get to see the individuals that you're going to work with. You're gonna have him as a mentor or her as a mentor, right? So I feel like you choosing the job that way, right? Other than just looking at a sheet of paper and being like, all right, pick a job.
Right.
Like being able to see that job and make that decision, right? I looked at fire hall and it just wasn't for me. I looked at security forces. That was more outside than what I want to do. This cyber job looks awesome. I'm not going to complain about sitting behind a desk and doing my work or running cables or switches or routers, right? Like, cool, all of that.
Mm. So we've talked about the jobs now. So you go to MEPS. What does basic training look like in the Air Force?
So it's 7.5 weeks long, and Air Force basic training has been changing like crazy.
Okay.
So when I joined, it was 6.5 weeks. Or 6 weeks, and then your 0 week.
Yeah.
And then it went to 7.5, and then it went to 8.
Wow.
And then it went back down to your 7.5 weeks now. So it's your 0 week plus your 7 weeks, right? So 7.5 weeks. So yeah, it's changed a lot. Mm-hmm. They've built new buildings now, so black and red flag days aren't really a thing anymore. So you don't get when it's hot, right, and humid, you would have Black Flag Day where you can't march and you can't do all these things outside. So they've built these giant, massive dorm rooms.
Okay.
And you can have all 4 flights underneath this awning, and it's crazy.
What the heck?
Yeah. So I just got to visit them when I went down for senior production recruiter classes.
Sure.
And I was like, oh my God. These things are amazing.
So where are the installations for Air Force basic training? Is there
So-
only one, or is there a couple?
So there's only one. It's Lackland Air Force Base. It's a joint base, Lackland, I think is what they call it now.
Sure.
So, but yeah, Lackland Air Force Base, San Antonio, Texas. So, yeah, it's
Wow.
crazy.
One-stop shop.
Yeah. I mean, there's still a few of the older dorms left, like when I went through, but they're pretty much all phasing out. I think the Navy has a few that they do some training in, but that's about it.
Wow.
So they used to have the dual stairwells, so you could go out the back or you could go out. Yeah, that's gone. They can't sneak up the back anymore. So,
Man, I was in a trailer. It was literally a double Connex. They put beds in.
oh, nice.
These people say starships, and now you're telling me there's these massive things for hot. Now.
Oh yeah.
So you got 7.5 weeks at Lackland Air Force Base in
Yep.
San Antonio, Texas. You graduate from there. What's, I mean, not on average, but I guess you could maybe equate to what is roughly around the advanced. What's after that? Advanced individual training is what we call it, AIT. You're calling it a tech school, right?
Technical school. Yep.
Technical school. What's like your average school? Obviously, there are a million different jobs, and they all require different times. But on max into maybe the minimum amount, what would you say?
So we have a minimum. I think it's 5.5 weeks, and then we have a maximum of EOD's almost a year.
Wow.
Weather's almost a year. And then I would say kind of the rolling average would be that 13-week.
Sure.
Security forces, fire hall, a lot of schools, some of the cyber schools are like 26 weeks.
Wow.
Intel, stuff like that, they're 20-some.
And are those technical schools still at Lackland, or are those all over the country?
All over.
Nice.
So like vehicle maintenance was at Port Hueneme in California. NDI, non-destructive inspection, that's still in Florida. I mean, you got Mississippi, you've got Goodfellow and Shepherd for a lot of your aircraft maintenance. Supply school is still in Texas. Recruiting is in Texas. So, like, your recruiting school is in Texas.
Sure.
Or in Lackland Air Force Base.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, you can kind of... The Air Force, wherever there's a schoolhouse, it's just like, hey, go over here.
Just over
go
there.
Over here.
Yeah, come on over.
Yeah, so, like, your graduation week, it kind of starts on Wednesday.
Sure.
And then by Friday, you're hopping a plane or a bus, and you're like,
Tech.
They want you at tech school that weekend. So then you can, in process, get all your stuff done. And then if you start on Monday, which we hope, right? So we don't have a split training, and we try not to, because the Air Force does not want you to go to basic training, come home, have a bad attitude when you go back, and then have to try and get that out of you.
Right.
And then send you back home.
Okay, so that's interesting. So does the Air Force offer a split option at all?
They try not to.
Sure, okay. So it's like an ETP almost.
Yep. So what'll happen is, you go to basic training and they cancel that class that you're supposed to go to.
Sure.
And the next one that you can get into is maybe 6 months down the road. That's the reason what's going to They're not gonna send you to basic training unless they absolutely have to, without a tech school attached to it.
Wow. Okay. So, man, everything I've heard is sounding great. You got some cool jobs in Minot, Fargo, and in everywhere, Grand Forks, etc. Again, if anyone's listening online that's interested in joining the Guard, I'm gonna let Technical Sergeant give a last little comments for anyone that's interested, but if you're enjoying the episode, sounds like a pretty awesome opportunity, and I'm an Army guy. Like, not saying I'm going to switch. I have my biases, but Sergeant Berthold, what else would you like to say, and then we'll wrap her up.
Yeah, I really feel, and I get this a lot when I go to schools, is like, oh, I just don't think the Air Guard is for me. How do you know? The Air Guard is for everybody. It has a job for everybody. So whether you want to be a personnelist, to a vehicle maintainer, to a welder, to just having a different career field, right? Maybe you want to be a police officer when you grow up. Well, you can be in security forces, and you can get a lot of your time waived off of school for being a police officer. So there is a job for everybody. So if you don't look it up, you'll never know, right? So that's one of the biggest things that I got for everybody is just the Air National Guard is for everybody. You can do any job that you put your mind to.
I love that. So the only thing I don't have, and what's a good way for people to get a hold of you if they're interested in joining, or they have got any more questions?
Yeah. So if you're on the western side of the state, you can give me a call. It's 701-500-5401. And my name's Tech Sergeant Bradley Berthold. Otherwise, you can look us up on Instagram, Facebook. You can look up the 119th Wing or the 219th, and you'll get our contact information from there as well. If you do call the 119th, if you're on the western side of the state, they will forward you to either myself or Sergeant Ondal. And then, yeah, we'll reach out. We'll have a good conversation. It's fun. It's enjoyable. There's no pressure, right? So we have our first phone call. There's no pressure. We have our first meeting. It's just the general information about the Air Guard. And then our third meeting is actually getting you ready to go to MEPS. And we don't even fill out any enlistment paperwork or anything like that because we do all of our enlistments at the units.
Right on.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, if for anyone that's interested, give them a call. We'll get you to the right contact information. From what it sounds like, you guys, not going to lie, from the MQ-9 Reaper program to Security Forces Nuclear Squad that goes out in the Minot, and some of the EODA here and firefighting, a lot of this stuff is super cool. And so if you want any information about joining the Air National Guard, please reach out. And with that, I appreciate it so much.
Heck yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being on the show, and we will catch you all next time.